This episode of The Amp Hour is brought to you by... we don't actually have sponsors anymore, but I wanted to pretend that the Contextual Electronics was sponsoring this. Really what I wanted to do was tell all of our Amp Hour listeners about a sweet deal that one of our former guests, Clint Cole, his company, Digilent, is offering a deal for Contextual Electronics members. So I wanted to announce it here. Basically, you can get the student pricing if you buy 3 months of Contextual Electronics on the Analog Discovery 2. It's a really cool piece of test equipment. We do talk about it a little bit in this episode, but check it out. I'll put a link in the show notes. Hope you take advantage of it. This is the Amp Hour Podcast, released August 13th, 2017. Episode 355. The Internet of Septage. Welcome to the Amp Hour. I'm Chris Gamble of Contextual Electronics.
And I'm Akiba from Freak Labs.
Welcome back, Akiba. How you doing, man?
Oh, good. Just got back from like 5 weeks in Europe on vacation.
That sounds rough. Really nice. That sounds rough, I gotta say.
Yeah, eating all the sausages and the cheeses, and yeah, it was actually my first time in continental Europe. So
really? Oh wow. What countries did you go to?
It was just Spain. Well, mainly I was in London. So I've been to the UK before, but I spent most of my time in London, and then took a trip out to Ibiza in Spain, and then also Barcelona.
Oh wow, that sounds awesome.
Yeah. It was really, really nice. So and after that, then I've decided that I need to understand Europe much more, because I've been missing out on something amazing.
Like, what do you mean? Like culturally, or?
I think culturally, going to Spain was really interesting. Going to Spain was really interesting because I grew up in California, and so I grew up with a lot of Mexican influence and Mexican culture. But when I went to Spain, I could see that a lot of the Mexican culture was influenced by Spanish culture, and then so I'm curious to learn more about Spanish culture in relation to the Mexican culture, which was part of my American upbringing. So.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I guess you can kind of just keep going east with it too, right? And seeing how Spanish culture was, Moorish culture was, all these different things kind of going back as different migrations happen and everything, right?
Yeah. And also being in the UK, because I think it was about 10 years, more than 10 years that I've been in the UK, but going back there and actually having more time to look around, and I could see a lot of the stuff from the UK helped me understand more about American culture, because so much of it is imported, but so far back that
right, that it's been morphed, and it doesn't make sense anymore or something.
Yeah. So that was really interesting. So that was really nice to just kind of take a break from the technology and electronics and just kind of.
I was going to ask, are you able to shut your brain off, or?
Actually, no. I had to
okay.
I had to escape and actually kind of work on some designs, and that was really interesting to me because, because I really enjoy electronics and designing, and I enjoy what I do.
Yeah. So,
and then I had a lot of inspirations for kind of designs that could be that.
So new product ideas or something, or?
It could be new product ideas. Some were just it'd be kind of cool if I tried this out. Just maybe some lighting, especially solar-based lighting. I'm really into that right now.
Yeah, that's cool. I definitely want to hear about that. I think it's good too because it's when you downshift your brain like that, right? It's just kind of like the importance of boredom too, where they talk about why do people come up with ideas in the shower, or sitting in a can or whatever, it's just because you're introspective because there's not much else to do, and so on a vacation it's kind of like that, right?
Yeah. I mean, because if I don't switch gears, if I'm in work mode, then I'm just looking at kind of maybe efficiency improvements, or just kind of other things. But then if I just have free time, and then my mind just wanders, and then suddenly I get an idea to try something out.
That's great. That's great. So, what have you been working on? I suppose that's a good catch up for all of our listeners who've heard shows with you before. We've done what, like 3 or 4 shows now, right?
Yeah. Actually, and thank you. It's always really nice to be on Amp Hour because I like listening to you and Dave talking too.
Yeah. Well, it's good to have you back, man. I point to you often as someone doing interesting things at the edge of the industry, like we were talking about before the show about agriculture type stuff. I think, and you're all the stuff you'll tell us about, I'm sure. So, what have you been working on?
I've been working on a project out in Egypt recently, and so this is a project with the World Bank, and it's dealing with sanitation technology, which is very like probably the most it's not really
It's a shitty
touched
job,
by
huh?
technology.
You can say it.
You have to deal with a lot of shit. And
Yeah,
then,
right. A lot of shit,
Ha
yep.
ha 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 ha. But it's really fascinating because it's such a basic piece of infrastructure, but it's like largely ignored by the technology industry. And I think it's probably because it's just an unglamorous thing. It's probably like technology and trash. There's not a lot of trash technology also.
Well, it seems like there's not a lot of opportunity there because it's not really like infrastructure is more physical, it feels like, but at the same time, you need to monitor it and control it and all these other things that happen in other industries, right?
Yeah. I mean, but I think there are opportunities. Actually, you could kind of say that there are like kind of huge opportunities because if you think about like how many homes have like laundry machines or something like that, it'd be like millions. And then if you think about how many homes have like septic tanks, versus like being connected to the standard sewer system, like homes have septic tanks, and then you need to know like when the septic tanks are full in order to call the guy to have it serviced.
Right.
And so that would be a piece of like a very simple piece of technology that you could implement.
Right.
And
and the consequences for not doing it are pretty dire.
Right. Dire. Yeah.
Yeah. Jeez.
Yeah. I was like,
All right.
my girlfriend complains that like I'm basically like I'm an adult child.
It's just you're just creative and free, Akiba. That's what it is, man.
No, I'm pretty much an adult child.
Me too.
But,
Okay, so what kind of so this was in Egypt, right?
yeah. So this was out in Egypt, and it's actually working with the World Bank and the Egyptian government. It's like kind of a collaboration between the two. And the point was to monitor the private operators that service the septic tanks in rural areas. Because what they would do is so what they should do is when they empty a septic tank, then they need to take it and to a government operated treatment facility in order to have the waste treated.
I know where this is
properly.
going. Yeah, right.
But what they would do is like they would service a house and then go to a nearby kind of drain and just empty it all into into the drain, and that goes into the Nile River, and then that creates like an environmental disaster, which is one of the major reasons why a lot of the Nile is like has unpotable water.
Oh, really? I didn't realize it was that level. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, well, because so many do it, like they do it so much that they don't even think that it's illegal. Like they would just,
right.
It's
like there's like everybody else is doing it. This water's gross, man.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy, and so the World Bank had a project where like they worked with the government in order to monitor the private operators, and then the government would mandate that they have to use this equipment to monitor the liquid levels and geotag the liquid levels, and then send that to a server. And then so anytime the liquid levels decrease, where there's like some kind of a release of the waste or sanitation, it's called septage.
Septage, really? Oh, interesting. I didn't know that term.
Yeah. So I'd be like, so what happens when the poop gets released? And then they're like, the septage. Oh, yeah, the septage.
Oh man.
But so and so it would like flag each event, and so ideally there should only be like the fluid levels should only decrease at the treatment facilities, the proper treatment facilities.
Right. Okay. No, that's interesting because I guess thinking about like how you would actually track that. So you track it based on the septic tank, not you don't actually like monitor the operator themselves because you might have someone who disables the unit or whatever.
Yeah. So, well, one of the considerations was that like when the operators understand like what we're doing, and then they might try and tamper with the equipment, and so like there's some safeguards that we haven't implemented yet because it's still at the pilot stage, but but adding in like kind of tamper-proof mechanisms, and so those would be like kind of authentication to make sure the hardware. Well, to make sure the hardware that's connected to it is authentic hardware, because like there's a couple different ways to tamper, like such as like disabling the sensor or even swapping out to a different sensor.
Right. Hot wiring it or something, and like just spoofing a level or something.
Yeah. So I think, but first we're gonna do the pilot. So we did the pilot, and then we're gonna do like kind of a controlled rollout, and then see how it goes first, and then after that we're going to kind of introduce the authentication based on like kind of how, because like there's so many other things to take care of too, because we also have to build like the server backend, and that's like working with the government and their IT team to do it.
Yeah, got it. So what was your target BOM cost for this kind of thing? Was like pretty low, or?
Well, for the initial prototype, I normally don't worry about the cost, because I feel like you can always optimize the cost. But the main thing was to get it up and running fast. So I used kind of as much off-the-shelf components as possible.
Okay.
And so like I use like, so the 3G mod, like we're using 3G, and so like so we'd use like 3G modules from Simcom.
Okay.
And so that'd be the SIM 5320E, which is for Europe. And then and like aside from that, then like and that'd be kind of the main thing, and then there'd be like kind of the microcontroller subsystem.
Actually monitoring the analog level or whatever the sensor output is, that kind of thing.
Yeah, basically just handling all the bookkeeping and stuff, and just control. But then there was an SD card interface, and then the interface to the GPS and the level sensor. And so the level sensor was actually the most expensive component, because we used an industrial level sensor.
Yeah, I was gonna say corrosive environment kind of thing. You have to deal with that.
Yeah. It was so we used an industrial level sensor, and then and it was a non-contact sonar sensor. And
really?
Yeah.
Like sonar based. So it doesn't actually. It doesn't actually even go in the soup, huh?
No, it doesn't.
So it's really it's more just.
Such a horrible way to put it. I had soup for lunch, so now I'm just like, oh,
sorry. No, I just mean so it's basically just bouncing it off the top level, and it's saying like ping time of how far down it is.
Yeah. And so like the idea is, at least we're gonna test out to have a non-contact sensor first, and see how it goes. Otherwise, there's like a lot of different ways to measure like kind of level. So there's like capacitive sensors, there's float sensors, there's all types. And so But what we need is just like kind of a fairly rough, like it doesn't need to be like millimeter accurate, but it needs to be like it needs to be able to tell when the levels are decreasing. And that's like the main thing. Right.
You need to know if 10 gallons are being taken out at a time, or 100 gallons or whatever, right? However big the
So the government originally So like typical feature creep is when they saw that it was actually working, and then they're like complaining that like actually we wouldn't be able to have an accurate estimate of the liters of septage. I'm like, yeah, we don't really care about the exact liters of septage. We just want to know when it's decreasing. And
right.
So
yeah, it's like, well, if you guys want to know the actual level, you can always open it up and look. Oh, you know what? We don't need to know that.
Yeah. It was. It's actually really interesting, because it was nice working with the Egyptian government, because they're really supportive. And like normally I think of working with government as like a lot of bureaucracy, and there is, but I think they actually, at least the sanitation team, got really excited about this project, and that's awesome. Yeah, because there's it's largely like this is an ignored problem, and so
Right.
having like kind of custom designed devices for a specific application, and they're like, oh, actually, we can use this to monitor septic tanks too, and then then they had like all kinds of ideas.
That's awesome. Yeah, like boots on the ground
Yeah.
type people who actually see problems day in, day out. Like that's like product research right there, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, these are the guys that design the sewer networks, and
That's
and
crazy.
have like the logistics for the sanitation trucks.
Wow. So,
Well,
what about power? How's it being powered?
yeah, so that's an interesting thing too. And originally we were discussing whether we'd take like the power, like the 12-volt power from the trucks, but then my thing is like because if you take the power from the trucks, then they can disable that at any time too.
Right.
And
And then it looks like
so
a dead sensor when in fact it's a sabotage sensor.
yeah, yeah. And so what I propose is just to have it as like an autonomous thing that it gets stuck onto the truck and then it's like left alone. And so it's solar powered. So there's a cable that goes through the tank into like to the outside where there's a solar panel, and basically it'll just recharge a lithium ion battery. And then and for the 3G, like, and with the 3G kind of uploading like maybe once per hour, then
Yeah.
it should have a lifetime of maybe 2 to 3 weeks of no sun, and then
Right.
so hopefully it never hits that point, but
Right.
it should get
I
something
mean,
like that.
Egypt's not quite known for its gloomy weather. Egypt's
Yeah,
no
yeah.
Cleveland, you know.
Yeah. So yeah. I mean, Egypt, there's a lot of sun. I mean,
Yeah.
it's freaking hot out there.
Yeah,
So
I bet.
it's like-
Right. Yeah, man, that's talk about a thankless job too of the sewer workers in that heat, man. That's got to be crazy.
Actually, yeah. Oh, sorry. The other thing was like we did the pilot test in the middle of Ramadan, which is like you have to fast during
Yeah.
the day. So from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. there's no food and no water. And so by the end of the day, I'd be getting like dizzy and like kind of like, oh, I don't feel so
Jeez,
good.
yeah. I don't think they're meant for you to work during Ramadan either, though. I think
Yeah,
usually
yeah,
they kind of take it easy during that time, you know.
Yeah. Actually, I didn't realize that when I scheduled the pilot. So I was like, oh, this was a bad idea.
You're like the hotels are so cheap, nobody's there.
Yeah. But-
Well, that's cool. So you're saying that this is installed on the truck though, and not? I thought you were saying this was on the septics.
Oh no, I'm saying that'd be because that was like one of the ideas that came up from the sanitation workers is just like monitoring the septic tanks, like having a very low cost thing that would
Right.
monitor septic tanks. And
But
then,
the actual thing
But
is the
the-
truck. You're saying
yeah,
that's
but
the
this
goal.
for this particular project, then we want to monitor the trucks to make sure they're like behaving properly.
Got it.
So like, yeah, it's really kind of a check on the drivers to make sure they're not illegally dumping.
Right. Yeah.
So, but yeah,
I mean,
But-
and this is. I mean, we were talking a little bit before the show too. Like, this is like, all right, so Internet of Things. Let's just say that term, get it out of the way. But like, this is like,
Bam, IoT.
yeah, I know, right? You never see it
Internet of-
coming, and then it hits you.
It's the Internet of Toilets.
That's right. Internet, the literal Internet of shit. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like this is a really good use case of this, I think, right? It's like it's monitoring something that seems a bit banal, but is actually solving a problem that you can do, you know, with monitoring data and watching over time, watching trends, doing what's it called? SPC, like statistical process control. You can see when something's out of control. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
this all makes sense to me. I mean, and this is
Yeah.
what you do anyways. You did this for the rice farm as well, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think like, because a lot of people, because I think the problem I see with like say IoT, like Internet of Things, like we called it wireless sensor networks, but but anyways,
That's so
just, like,
passe.
yeah. I mean, it's being pedantic, so so I'm just asking permission to use IoT for now, but like I think the problem is everyone's searching for like the big killer app that's gonna sell millions of units or and then
Well, and they always look
and
in
then-
consumer too, right? Where it's like,
yeah
that's
I
not
thi-
that's not where it's really going to matter. I think.
yeah I think it's gonna be really hard because there's so many different domains that you have to cross, like so for this project alone we had to deal with just like kind of like just getting the specifications, like working with a domain specialist in sanitation technology, and then after that creating the electronics, then writing the firmware, getting the communications going, and then working on the server back end into the database.
Yep.
So we had so that was and
keeping it secure and all that other stuff too, right? I mean, like there are legitimate concerns.
Yeah, and we're still discussing like how to do the security in order to that's. But I mean, yeah, and then there's also, and the big thing, like the government, like especially the minister of housing and stuff, then they're really concerned about the front end and like how the front end will look, because they need it to look like kind of very intuitive and also like beautiful, because that's the face of the project.
Right.
And so we have to work with front end designers in order to do that. So there's like a huge like domain, a huge amount, or
right.
There's
the span of it all, right?
Domains,
I mean, it's crazy. Yeah.
So I think, and it's complex, and I don't think it's ready for consumers at this point. But there's so many kind of niche applications that it'd be really useful, and you could actually change a lot of. You could optimize, or you can kind of disrupt a lot of industries with it.
Boy, we're 2 for 2 on the bingo sheet here, man.
No, but I mean, you can actually
you can make a meaningful impact in the world. You're saying.
Yeah. So, but I wanted to use the D word because I think I feel like it's important. If I'm gonna use IoT, I'm gonna use disrupt too.
You do you, man. You do you. That's good.
So,
and we were also talking about like the applications. You were saying the applications are what interests you, anyways, right? Because it is this spanning all these domains, anyways, right? Of like, it's different tools you're pulling down off the shelf, but then the interesting stuff is searching out the applications that might make sense.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's so much focus on the technology. Like, so for IoT, then there's so much focus on the technology. So there's Wi-Fi, there's Bluetooth Low Energy, there's LoRa, there's Sigfox.
Sigfox, yeah.
There's
the
like
low
LTE.
pan. There's the what's the W low pan or something?
Yeah, there's 6 low pan.
6 low pan. That's it. Yep.
And then I mean, there's so many, and and I guess I've been involved in it long enough that I just don't really care about the technology, because the technologies come and go, and like the real issue is like, what problems can you solve? Like it really doesn't matter kind of what technology you use, as long as you can solve the problem. And I think that's where I've kind of ended up right now, is like, so
is that true in prototyping though, or is that true all the way through to production as well? Because it feels like in prototyping I agree with you, but I think then the production, it starts to change things around a little bit.
I guess, well, it would kind of matter. Like right now, I feel like I use a fairly simplified stack. So I'm just, I'm in terms of technology. So I just use like kind of standard 802.15.4 radios, which like that's been stable. That's, they're like the protocol's about 15 years old now, I think.
Yeah.
And so and then the chips are very stable. And then, so that's kind of for the short range wireless. And then that would go to like a gateway that'd be using like 3G. And then that's very stable also, because that's the same, because it's the data network.
Right. Yep.
So I feel like that's manufacturable. That'd be stable through production also. Whereas, I think if you scale something like LoRa, then you also have to discuss with the ISPs to see if there's LoRa service in the areas that you'd want to scale to. So I would consider that like
remind me what LoRa is. I mean, these names really have crept up on me where I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about now.
Okay. So LoRa is a kind of I guess like a 900 megahertz wireless sensor protocol. It's mostly pushed by Semtech, which is a chip manufacturer. And they're kind of advocating setting up kind of small ISPs and create, basically, in my opinion, duplicating the cellular network in order to provide coverage for these, so that you can throw these sensors down anywhere, and then they'd be able to connect to the internet. So even in remote locations, you can still connect to the internet.
So is it like someone else owns the base station though, or like it's like you own and run the base station?
No, this would be someone else. So this is a service provider model, and so
okay.
And then, there's a lot of people like within.
Well, you have to get a lot of scale for that, huh?
Yeah, and so like, and they're pushing it. There's like money involved in it. Like Sigfox pulled down like I think tens or hundreds of millions of dollars, and then they're doing the same thing. But I just feel like, and then the data rates that they're talking about is like less than like, and they're saying, oh, if you do this, then you can transmit, once every 5 seconds or something like that. It's like,
right.
and like, and you're talking about like, you get like your available. I don't. It's just like my big thing is you don't own the network, and so like if you don't own the network, then
it works until it doesn't, right?
Yeah,
it works until they're like, oh yeah, we're obsoleting this, and you're like, what? All of my devices are in the field.
Well, yeah. I mean, like, how is that better than just using available infrastructure? And so, like, that's what I prefer. I prefer like kind of taking a risk averse way of doing things and just using like what's available right now.
Right.
So.
Well, and I mean, to be fair, like, so you're talking about creating a similar kind of setup where you're saying like 3G backend, and then you have a 802.15.4 like broadcast point from there, right?
Yeah.
So
like,
but there is risk, at least a little bit, in terms of like, well, if 3G gets obsoleted eventually, there is risk for that too. But it's probably lower risk, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's all a matter of like degrees of risk, and so like I would say that because like 3G is working, and so it won't be obsoleted for a while because like like I think GSM is slightly risky in developed countries because that's kind of like it's being sunsetted in the U.S. and some other countries, but it's still strong in like India and like Egypt. And,
right. Well, that's another thing that's interesting too, is that like, so you obviously already talked about having devices in multiple places. Then you start having to do versioning for your products as well, where it's like, oh well, that might already exist because of spectrum limitations or whatever, which modems usually take care of. But it's like 802.15.4. Is that allowed everywhere? I mean,
so 2.4 gigahertz is basically kind of an international license-free band, and so that's why everybody uses 2.4 gigahertz.
Got it.
And then 900 megahertz, you have to be a bit careful because, like in Europe, it's
isn't it like Japan 815 or something as well? I forget. There was one that like shifts down, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, Japan was originally 950 megahertz, which was like an oddball frequency, and then they switched it down to like 908 megahertz now, which is more within the like the North American.
The antenna doesn't change as much.
yeah. It's just like basically like chip companies would have to create radios specifically for Japan in order to be compatible with Japan standards, and then because Japan is a small market, then like basically
the price goes up like crazy, right?
Yeah. So pretty much nobody did it, and so it was a useless spec.
Oh, interesting.
So that's I think one of the reasons why they changed it down to like 908.
Got it.
And then but Europe is 868 megahertz, like US is like 915 to 930. So there's all these different versions. So most 900 megahertz radios will support like maybe 850 to 940 megahertz around there.
Oh, and then they'll just tune in based, like you can set a register or something, and it tunes into the location.
Yeah. So there's a PLL that normally you can set the PLL in the registers to for like whatever frequency you want to. You want to be the center frequency. So
that's cool.
But so I mean, it takes more study based on the country, but but I think I like 900 megahertz because you get better range.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Yeah. You mean
probably
because of like absorption and the 2.4 gig spectrum and stuff, like water absorption?
Yeah, well, 2.4 gigahertz, you can actually get really good range off of 2.4 gigahertz. You just have to have like a simplified protocol, like a low data rate, and then like say in North America, you can blast out to like 1 watt, so you can have like a 1 watt front end, and so that would, they're like people that use like, like front end like Ubiquity uses like front end amplifiers and also high gain antennas, and then they can get like like 10 to 30 kilometers of range.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
And what is the data rate for those, like kilobit or lower?
I'm not sure. I don't have a huge amount of experience with the Ubiquity stuff, but I think like if you wanted to do like really long range stuff, then you'd have to back off to like because you can't, like the high data rate Wi-Fi uses complex communications encoding.
Right.
And it becomes difficult, like, because as you go long distances, you get a lot of noise. So you have to use a very simple encoding. So like a BPSK, like if you go down to like 1.5 megabits per second or something like that, which is like super old school, then you could probably get like really really long range.
Got it. Yeah, because a couple weeks ago I had Mike Osman on the show, and he was previewing his talk that he was going to give at DEF CON. I had to go see it, and he was talking all about the direct sequence spread spectrum stuff. Yeah, and that blew my mind. I had never really looked at that stuff before, but it kind of blew my mind. So it was about, it's a, like the keying and all that stuff. I think they'll probably publish that talk eventually, but it was really just like how you can like basically dig a signal out of nothingness. It was really cool.
Okay. Yeah. I don't like that. That'd be kind of interesting, but like I don't really dig too deep into like kind of the physical layer of the communications. But actually, like the spread spectrum is generally just to play nice with other frequencies, and so you can turn it off, and then you get like a higher data rate because you don't have to go through like what's called the scrambler. So you get like a much higher data rate. So if you want to be an asshole, and then you just turn off the spread spectrum and then use the higher data rate.
But if you're in the middle of the countryside, maybe it's not a big deal, right?
Yeah. So I've tested that out, and it's actually it's pretty nice. But then you'll like,
it seduces me each time. I love the data.
But since you have such a sharp peak at the center frequency, you'll corrupt other people's data. So the spread spectrum flattens out that peak and widens the actual spectrum. So you spread the spectrum, and then that
like less concentrated in energy kind of thing.
Yeah, it reduces the noise and interference that would corrupt other data that might be sending.
Got it.
So.
Well, that's cool. So you basically, I mean, and that's your kind of your general setup. You're saying 3G to this 802.15.4, and then a lot of your receiving devices are simpler. Like they have that same 802.15.4, and you do some kind of handoff between them. Then.
Yeah. Like so, I advocate like keeping networks simple. So I basically just do like single hop. So like there's all this talk about mesh, like Bluetooth mesh and all that stuff. Yeah. But I advocate like, just keeping things simple because that simplifies the software, which simplifies the chance for bugs and errors a lot. But you just do a single hop to the gateway, and then that goes to the server. And so like, and that would cover, and especially if you have like kind of if you control the antennas and you have amplified front ends, then you can do like, a couple kilometers. You could do a couple kilometers for the local sensor network, and then you just have the gateway to the server, and that would take you all the way to just like being, I guess, all the way to the cloud.
The cloud.
Oh, 3 for 3.
Ooh, the cloud. Ooh. Akiba, the cloud is just someone else's computer.
Pretty much. Yeah. For me, that'd be like the $5 DigitalOcean.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah, the droplets. Yep.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so.
Oh, I should announce that I finally figured out how to do Let's Encrypt. So the amp hour page is now HTTPS. So I'm very proud of myself for that. Speaking of DigitalOcean, their tutorial set me free.
That's awesome. Yeah. Like for Hacker Farm, which is like what like the project that we're doing out here. Then like Let's Encrypt is amazing because. Before, in order to set up a web shop, I guess it's kind of an aside from everything else, but to set up a web shop, you just had to pay, you had to pay for of course, like the web service provider, but then you had to pay for a static IP address in order to get the SSL, and then after that you had to pay for the SSL, and so like, when you total it all up, to get the shopping cart, and then when you total it all up, it's like $300 a year or something like that.
Right, because you're supposed to get that like the consumer-enabled certificate too. Yeah. Yeah,
but I mean, so with Let's Encrypt, then and also like you no longer need static IPs in order to like.
Oh, I didn't know that actually. Okay.
Well, Let's Encrypt is URL based, and so like, and I tested this out. And so you can basically just create web shops for free now with like, if you have like a service provider that handles Let's Encrypt. So for Hacker Farm, we're just setting up web shops for for all the people out here, and then for
really
all the local,
that's fun. So it's like a distributed Etsy.
Yeah, or they're private web shops, but it makes it it makes it where like to set up a web shop has like zero cost, and then you use like Stripe, which is free.
Yep.
Which is like
payment processing. Yep.
Yeah, which is free payment processing. So you don't have the credit card fees either, like the monthly credit card fees either.
Well, it's not free. It's just low cost, right?
I mean,
free. No.
No, I mean like because normally for the payment processing, you'd pay a monthly fee for the merchant process.
Right.
The merchant
account.
processor.
Yeah, you're right. Yep.
And so like with Stripe, you don't pay those monthly fees. So basically, you set up a web shop for next to nothing. I would say.
Yep.
And
That's
then
awesome.
and then you only pay the transaction fees when you go through it. And that's like I think that's one way that I think we live in the future is that you can just set up a shop for almost no cost.
Right. He says that as he communicates over thousands of miles on fiber optic cables to a guy in Chicago.
Yeah. We do live in the future. It's pretty amazing.
I agree, man. I think it's...
And unfortunately, that future includes a president who is Trump. So like...
Well, we won't need to go there too much, but yes.
Yeah. Okay, I'll stop right now. I'll stop right now with that. So. Just had to throw that one in.
Take the good with the bad. Late night TV's never been better.
Yeah.
So you're setting up web shops. Where were we going before that? We were talking about like edge devices, stuff like that, and that's really cool though. I mean, so how is the Rice project going? Is that that is a similar kind of setup you were talking about, right?
Yeah. So actually, we're morphing the rice field monitoring project to we set up a small like we have like a plot of land on the farm because one problem with the rice farming project is that we had to set up the monitoring equipment on somebody else's property, which means that we had to get permission every time we go and check and like kind of update it. So we got our own like kind of plot of land and we're setting up like experimental agriculture areas.
It's like paddy for science, or
kind of, yeah. I mean, like we're not only experimenting with the technology, but experimenting with different grow methods. So one area is we're doing like rotation crops.
Cool.
Crop rotation.
Yeah.
One area is like kind of raised bed gardening, but we're like kind of varying the stack, I guess you call it, which is like what's inside the raised beds. And then
like as you go down, and then you turn the beds for getting like nutrient cycling stuff.
Yeah, well, you know, like so, like the stack that we currently have is like there's on the bottom is like cardboard and then some kind of compost material and then a bunch of cow poop and then some soil.
Nothing makes better tomatoes. I mean, like let's be honest.
Really, like actually, I have a lot of respect for bullshit now. So it's like it is, you know, I feel like calling things bullshit is doing a disservice to that wonderful
wonderful resource that comes out of
comes out of a cow's ass. That's what, you know.
I mean, Akiba, you're quickly moving this show to having a poop pun as the title. We might have to go there.
Astronomical. But So and then and at the top of the raised beds, then we have soil and then an insulating layer of rice husks.
Oh,
and then,
cool. Okay.
Yeah, that's really interesting because it keeps the water in. So for the raised beds this year, they went crazy and like the plants were pretty much exploding out of the ground.
Yeah.
And we have like a huge harvest of vegetables that there's nowhere near one person can finish. I mean, we had to spread it out because we had to get everybody eating it. But yeah, and we didn't water it at all because
Oh, really? So just natural rainfall was sufficient.
Yeah, it would rain and then like the rice husks would prevent the water from evaporating out of the ground. So it would let the water into the ground, but then or into the raised beds and then
no mold problems or anything either?
Not that we know of. So like I haven't seen any mold. It's mainly the larger problems were insects because since we're doing it organically, then we don't use pesticides.
Right.
Yep. So yeah, we had to experiment with all these different
peppers and stuff like that. Like what's it called? Capsaicin.
Yeah. Just like the spice like spice mixes with like different different peppers and like vinegar and things like
Yeah,
that. So,
right. And isn't that's what nicotine is, isn't it? Like in tobacco plants, like that's
like
a natural
is it,
insecticide.
I'm not sure about nicotine, but I think capsaicin, like the spice, capsaicin is
Right,
what
right.
makes spicy things spicy, and I think
Right.
that it prevents like insects from eating
Yeah,
eating
yeah,
them.
yeah.
So, and then tomatoes are actually evolved from nightshade, so the tomato leaves are actually a good pesticide also, which I
Oh,
didn't
yeah.
realize.
Right, because nightshades are poisonous in high doses, right?
Yeah. So if you ever play like Dungeons and Dragons or whatever, and you had to mix the reagents, or Ultima, and you had to mix the reagents to make the poison cure, that is like nightshade and mandrake. So that's how I remember it. Like
That's
Ultima
awesome.
4, Blast of the Past.
That's fantastic. Well, so so the evolution of this project though. So you said it's still going. I mean, you said
Yes,
that
yes.
you're on your own land now, but is it what rev of hardware is it?
Well, so right now, actually, we're gonna convert to 3G because, like, since we're doing a lot of 3G stuff, then we're just moving that.
What were
like-
you on? You were on some other kind of like base station setup.
We were just using 900 megahertz, and we were using like was it directional antennas to a gateway that'd be an Ethernet gateway.
Okay, so you like basically had to like point it back at the farmhouse kind of thing, and then collect data from there.
Yeah. But I think but it's impractical because there's not a lot of places that are like like very close to like say a farmhouse that has
Right.
like internet, like an Ethernet connection. So it makes much more sense because I think once we get like the farm equipment, so like the moisture sensors, and we get those ones to send to an aggregator and having that sending out to the 3G to the backend server, then that becomes a solution that and that other farmers can take and and use.
Yeah.
And I think we need to make it much more user friendly too.
Right, I was going to ask about that. So, like, I mean, it's not like an unboxing, but it is like an implementation almost. It's like you have to. So,
Yeah.
do they have to pair the devices? Do they have to just power them on? How are they powered? That kind of thing.
Well, I think probably based on based on our experiences here, is we'd have to have somebody go and set it up at this moment.
Okay.
Like we'd have to have somebody to kind of supervise the setup and have everything set up because it's based on the farmers that we've worked with. They're all like older people, like
Right.
70s would be kind of like would be fairly young, and so
Seriously?
like they don't.
Wow.
Yeah, like out here, out in the Japanese countryside. So like they don't have smartphones; they have the old flip phones. So you can't, like the smartphone interface, like the beautiful iPhone interface.
Oh yeah.
doesn't
So
work.
like you're not doing Bluetooth, so you can control your app or control it with an app rather, right?
Yeah, it'd be more like you'd almost have to do like send email alerts or email summaries or
Yeah. Or SMS even, right?
Yeah, but I mean, like, I think the internet, like having a nice internet, like a nice page that's accessible from the internet and has like a very well designed dashboard would be useful. So like that's kind of where we're headed right now is like actually kind of like basically getting the hardware to the point where you can transplant it. Like it doesn't require like an Ethernet port. So you can basically anywhere that there's like a 3G connection, then you can kind of use that setup. And then also we need to improve a lot of the server side stuff.
Right.
So.
Well, and you can always do stuff like I've been really into like these. I mean, If This Then That, I think is a great service, and like Zapier's another one for the business side of things that I've been using.
I
And,
haven't
like,
played with If This and That. Like,
oh no, it's really. I mean, like, I know some people kind of scoff at it in terms of like connecting things, and it's simple and it's a little bit slow, but like in terms of user friendliness, that's what it all comes down to, right? It's like,
oh yeah,
it's such a, and so like if you're creating like even a feed, you can really just pipe. It's really just a data pipe that kind of goes from one thing to another, and so. You can really make simple, so like you're saying, right? You're saying you're standardizing on a web page, but it's probably also being fed with an API or something. You could then go and plug it in as either convert it to an RSS feed or something like that, and then, have subscriptions to that or do MQTT and subscribe to that kind of stuff or whatever you need to do. So
actually, that sounds really interesting. So
Yeah.
I have to check it out. Like now that So the World Bank project is like on a bit of hiatus, so everyone's on holiday, and
Hmm.
and they've just closed out their fiscal year. So I have
Akiva's
more
like,
time to.
money's gone, I'm gone.
No, no. But I think so I'm gonna have more time to like kind of play around with stuff. So I'd like to look more at like yeah, I'd like to check out if this and that. Right now we're using Python, so
Yeah.
Python Flask is so useful.
Yeah.
Like or the Flask framework for Python is so useful for like just quickly implementing like say a server, sorry, a backend
Yeah.
a backend thing because you just use the library for the database implementation and you use the library for the
And front end UI.
well, not the front. Right now, it just spits out like ugly text. So,
Oh, okay.
so that's the problem. Is like when you go to a specific thing, then it'll just spit out like kind of JSON, like
Got it.
JSON. I guess is a.
JSON.
But
Yeah.
yeah, but I mean yeah. So sorry, I meant you need a library for the like it's a simple library for a database, and then it's a simple library for kind of the REST API, and that's pretty
Oh,
much
got it. Yep.
what we're looking for. And then beyond that, we probably have to work with like a front end developer,
Right.
Like,
Right.
because otherwise, yeah, I don't even know which JavaScript library
Right, but it's
people
not.
are on right
But,
now.
but that's probably not worth your time to do either, right? I mean, like that's the thing. I don't know. I think
Yeah,
about
yeah.
like APIs and like these, the RESTful APIs and stuff like that too. It's kind of like they're like connectors, right? For
Yeah,
people-
yeah.
It's like you have a defined interface. You expect certain things to come over each pin or whatever that interface is, and it's like then you can talk either way on it. Like that's kind of. Or
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
connectors are the API of the hardware world. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm hoping that like so then like ideally we'd only have to work on kind of the API, and then like there'd be like different front end people that would work on various
Right.
pieces of the front end because I think that's definitely I'm not like I don't make beautiful front ends, so my front ends are ugly and just
Right.
like functional.
Right. Yep. But that's fine, right? I think that kind of separation is, as long as you're publishing about what the API is spitting out, then it's not a big deal.
Yeah, no, it's all open. So this is and I think that's why I want to do like kind of the just the standard like say 802.15.4 is an open standard to like the 3G, which is like kind of a well-known thing, and then with that then you can just basically have just everything standardized, everything open, and you own the network. And I think that's
Yeah.
that to me is very important, is because then you control like how often you transmit, you control like how the data is handled, Whereas like if you have to go through a service provider, you really don't know like are they archiving all that information? Like, do you really own that information? There's like all these questions.
Right.
That
What
might
happens?
come up.
Well, like what happens when you stop paying? Right. I mean, that's a huge thing.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
the SaaS model, but
Sassy.
super sassy. So you were talking about
Actually, hold on. I think we're at number 4 on the bingo because we used
we did say
IoT,
SaaS. You're right.
Disrupt.
Yep.
I use cloud and
Yep.
I use SaaS. So I think are there any more that we should?
I'm sure there's
think,
more.
I think somehow we need to work in machine learning and TensorFlow.
Oh yeah.
So-
I mean, venture capital has to come up at some point, right?
AI.
AI, of course, right?
And
I mean, that's kind of
blockchain.
tied to machine
Blockchain.
learning, right? Blockchain.
And last
Oh
one
yeah,
would be blockchain.
Bitcoin. Yep.
So,
We got them all, folks.
yeah. Oh, I have one more, which would be what is it like something biohacking.
Biohacking. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So because that's like a big one.
What about like
with that.
autonomous vehicles too? We could just like say that's. I mean, we could really.
I think I mean yeah, I guess that's a bit hypey. Like,
No, that's a bit hypey.
Yeah. So, but I think blockchain is more hypey than autonomous vehicles.
Yeah, that's true.
So, and then I really like but I really like kind of drones. So one thing that I'm thinking of doing is I'll probably set aside some money and time and invest in learning how to build like drones, but more like kind of more like from the point of view of using them in agricultural applications. And I know like because everybody says, oh, DJI already does that, but I think yeah, I mean I'd like to know just for my own self, because if I bought or actually my friends have DJI drones and they're terrified of crashing them, and
Yeah. Right.
I hate that feeling. So I'd rather like if I build it and I crash it, then I know that it just takes like $20 in parts to repair it, and then that would make me feel much better.
I think, well, so like especially with agriculture stuff, that I think that you got to do it with a fixed wing instead of quads, honestly, because it's just you don't get enough distance otherwise.
Oh, with the quads, like, because you get like maybe what 15, 20 minutes.
20 minutes is the usual figure.
Flight time.
Yeah. And so, like, unless you have like a bunch of recharge stations, then what? You know, and it's like fields are not small. So if you're trying to like do a raster of a field,
okay.
you know, like how do you do that? You have to.
I feel like fixed wing takes more effort to like.
No way. No, they're super cheap too. You can do like foam ones that are like super cheap.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Actually, like also that would kind of like I'm trying to set aside like more time to like kind of to get like to I guess use skills that are outside of what I normally do, because I find that I just because that keeps me motivated. And so like if I did the quadcopters, that would force me to learn more about quadcopters, and also or fixed wing, and then also then I could actually use my FPGA skills again, so I can for the imaging. Yeah, because a lot of the cameras you need kind of an FPGA interface now, so like or at least as glue logic to the controllers.
Yeah, sometimes there's a bunch of solutions for that stuff. There's that OpenMV is a Python based one.
But I think you'd still need. Well, I guess if you use a Raspberry Pi, but I'm talking about using like a Cortex M3 as
like keeping the cost down and everything.
Yeah. So like something that doesn't use like a MIPI interface, like the high speed serial interface. So if you use the parallel interface, then you pretty much need like some programmable logic as the glue to a controller.
Yeah. You know, last time we had Bunny on a couple months ago, and he was talking about his 10-year PhD thing. And I was telling someone about that the other day of like, every 10 years, you just learn a new thing. You know, obviously more than that, but like specialization he was talking about.
I feel like I mean, if that's true, then I feel like my 10-year thing is business, because like I've
business.
It's like
ethics.
Business ethics. There are no ethics in business. No, I'm just kidding. Actually, I feel like much the opposite. But because for my business, I think I've made every mistake possible. I've just done everything wrong that you could do, and and I've suffered. I paid my dues, and now I feel like finally I kind of understand what the concepts are, and like, oh, okay. So when people come to me and talk to me about like kind of like, I'm gonna do this and this and this, I'm like, normally I don't really say much, because like you kind of have to go through it. Otherwise I don't want to like pop their balloon, but you're just like, oh, okay, I know how this is gonna end.
Yeah, your balloon's gonna pop though. You are gonna fall hard. Well, you said, and you said that you're looking at reworking some of your products because of that, right? Because of the lessons you've learned and the way you want to like improve manufacturing, stuff like that, right?
Yeah. So like, I think one of the big things, and like, so if you look at my websites, they're all in flux right now because I'm revamping my main website, and also I'm upgrading my web shop. But what I'm doing is, first of all, I'm organizing my products into product lines. So one of the mistakes that I made before was just designing stuff because I could.
Yep.
Like so that's like kind of
like you would start from scratch each time, or would you actually make like a derivative, like the design A becomes design A1 and then branches to B1 or something like that?
It's like designing something just because like, like you see something like, I could design something like that, and then you do it, but that doesn't become a product. Like you design something and then you put it out there, and then and there's no interest, because
so the difference between a prototype and a product, you're saying, or not even a prototype, like a pilot build almost.
Well, I think right now, like when I approach a design, it's like by the time I'm designing, I already kind of know who my target audience is, like how I want to reach them, like what the features are kind of features that I think they need. Like I think about the marketing first before I even started design. I think that's kind of the big shift that happened, rather than just like, like I see something and like, I'm gonna design something for, like I designed something for TV white spaces so that you could geotag. You could measure the white spaces and geotag it, and and see like where there's like what locations have unused spectrum. And
Huh.
I think that was really interesting. But but there's like 3 people in the world that need that.
Yeah. You know what else works?
And so
GPS.
yeah, yeah. So and then so like and like I think my projects with Wrecking Crew where where we do like the wireless control of the lighting. I think that was kind of the thing where somebody said, "Hey, can you do this?" And I said, "Sure, let's give that a try." And then later on, trying to turn that into a business, but then it's like actually it's really cool, but I think I have to figure out like kind of like how much effort I want to put into that versus like my real thing is like kind of environmental monitoring.
Right.
So like
right.
I'm really like that I feel is kind of my calling and my like is fascinating to me. Is like trying to figure out like kind of what might be invisible to to everyone else.
Yeah, that's good.
Like how to measure what's invisible. So
Did you do you still sell the Wrecking Crew like kits to other people?
I sell them. I'm very selective about because they're not advertised. There's no
Right.
way to buy them. You kind of have to.
Well,
Contact me
I was
and
on
then,
YouTube
like,
the other day, and for some god awful reason, I came across like a top 5 America's Got Talent things. I was like watching singing videos, and then one of the things was like this Ukrainian group that was like that won a prize on there, and I was like, wait a second, that looks like Wrecking Crew, and they did like the dance that looks almost exactly like Wrecking Crew too. I was like,
it might if they're Ukrainian, then yeah, it might have been my stuff.
Really?
So like it depends. There's like one Ukrainian group that I work closely with, and so they and so that's, but yeah. So like I sold it, but I think like the thing is when you sell something, you have to also think about the support, and the support burden
right,
is pretty
exactly.
high on that.
right,
And like everybody's kind of waiting, for me to upgrade stuff, and then I'm trying to do all these other things. So like
Right.
that became a problem. So like and so that's where like that's another mistake is like once you have all these different products and they aren't related to each other, and
right.
then
Well, like that dance the dance troupe stuff. It's like that's a whole business, right? That could totally
Yeah.
be a specialized business that gets spun out by itself, but then it has to be
Yeah.
taken and solidified, and it can't depend on Akiba, saving the day at the last minute, right?
Yeah, well, I'm trying for that. Then I'm working with some guys in Hong Kong, and also working with Wrecking Crew, and I'm trying to teach them more about how to maintain the software on their own. And if somehow a software developer comes out of it that wants to like kind of work, work on that stuff, then it'd be cool to work,
Yeah.
to have them, have them do it, or basically like I have to figure out because like my main thing is going to be working on the Freak Lab stuff and all the environmental
Right,
stuff,
right.
and so like, and then I think I like the lighting, but I don't want to be like the lighting guy my whole
Right,
life.
right,
So,
exactly, right.
Like, hey, there's the EL wire guy. So it's like,
Yeah,
So-
but I think that it's like this consequence you made this child that you put into the world, and it's like now it's
Yeah.
it's reaching
that's-
adolescence, right?
yeah, that's an interesting one because I think that's just I would chalk that up to like kind of the arrogance of being an engineer, like because since I can do it, then it should be done. Whereas from a business
Right.
point of view, it's like, oh crap, what about the long term effects?
Right,
of,
right. Yeah, the support stuff is, and especially like when
Yeah.
it's something that maybe I'm sure that you have other projects on your shelf that didn't hit as well as that, right? And it's like,
Yeah.
but those just as easily could have been a thing that took off, and you'd have to support as well, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's like really, just like because now I think about so if you have customers and then if you release products, then you have a responsibility to support it and support the customers, and then do you have the time to do that? And so that's
Right.
like another
And
consideration.
is
that I
it
think
priced
about.
in too, right? That's another big thing.
Yeah, like the documentation. That's like stuff that you don't really consider so much as an engineer, but like as a business owner, then you start thinking about it really hard.
Right.
Like especially because you're pulled in like 10 different directions. Like especially for people that want to do like say hardware, open hardware, or just closed hardware or whatever. Because you have to think about the manufacturing, you have to think about the sourcing, you have to think about the marketing and the sales, the web shop, all that stuff.
Right.
So how much time do you want to devote, and how many different directions can you go in? So
Well,
that's
and
like the big thing.
and the thing that messes with my head too is like so like thinking about a product like that. It's a successful it's a successful product that could grow more, but it's like okay, if you really wanted to grow it, right? If you want to get the funding to support all the infrastructure around it, like a support staff and marketing and other design staff, manufacturing, if you brought that in house, it's like by that point, then you're just the manager of that thing. You don't even get to do the fun stuff anymore, like
Yeah. I think like I like working with wrecking crew, so I'd still work with them, but I don't want to like just kind of supporting them on a lot of inane stuff is just like kind of like it's just that's not like I don't feel like my calling is to do lighting, right?
Right.
My I'd rather do something that I think is meaningful to me, and I've always kind of like nature and natural surroundings, and so like it'd be great to try and work on things that might preserve the environment or improve it. So.
And hanging out by septic tanks in 40°C weather. I mean, that's another thing that's like you were saying before the show is just like your passion.
Yeah, kind of hoping that. Well, I'm kind of hoping that doesn't become my whole life, but like. But I think it's actually interesting. My girlfriend and I we wrote an article for I think it's ASME or the IEEE something.
ACM.
Yeah, ACM. It's for students or something like that. But it's really I'll give you a link afterwards.
Okay.
I think if it's online. But anyways, it's about like having a business, and instead of creating a business plan, it's creating a lifestyle plan. And I think that's kind of where I'm at right now. I don't really care that much about like making a lot of money, because I live in the countryside, so like like my cost of living is minimal right now. So but I do want to have a lifestyle that I feel like is meaningful to me, and that means that like I do stuff that has meaning to me, and also like like I go places and I live places that are meaningful to me. So like
that's good. That's actually if you'll excuse the business book reference, the book The E-Myth is like a classic. It's the E refers to an entrepreneur, but it's like it's basically kind of talking about business. It is told in this weird like storytelling style, basically. But one of the things that he talks about is the what does he call it? It's the same thing where it's like you have to basically imagine what you want your life to be like, because it's going to be different if you want to be like the head of a Fortune 500 company versus living in the Japanese countryside, right? Those things do not cross over, and so it's.
I mean like I guess I think I remember the E-Myth. It sounds like it sounds like such a like a technology title now, but
right, it's exactly right, like E like electronics or
like the E-Myth, like this
like like a story of e-machines in the 90s.
Yeah, something like that. I don't know, but I think like the main thing is right now I'm trying to like for my company that I'm trying to cultivate markets in areas that I have family or my girlfriend have family, and so like so like I would do like so I'm trying to put together a schedule for next year that would have like a bunch of workshops, say around California, and so that would mean that I can like kind of visit my family as well as like kind of handle and do the workshops and promote my business. And then,
we were talking about that same thing, before the show. So it's
and then and then trying to do that in London, so that so while we're kind of taking care of the business stuff, but also we can visit my girlfriend's family or Australia, and so like I'd like a lifestyle where like maybe I live for a certain amount of time in like places, or we live in places that have meaning to us. And and we structure our lives and our businesses, or we structure our businesses around the lifestyle that we want. I think that's kind of that's kind of important.
People use lifestyle business as like a disparaging term, but we're like, sign us up, please.
It's like a bad word, but I'm like like I've seen people that have gone through like the VC grinder, and like it's like that's like that's I don't want my life to be like that. So
I agree. It's I mean like and it's neither good nor bad. It's just that you choose not to, right? I mean like you can make a lot of money that way, and that might allow you to do even more good at some point in the future. But it's about whether you're willing to trade off for it.
I mean I think it's everything is about trade-offs, and so like I don't, I think I don't care about becoming like a billionaire, or I don't care about creating a unicorn company. Oh, that's number 6. Is that number 5 or number 6?
That's got to be 20. We're at 20 now.
But but I do care about like kind of like just I do care about like kind of the intrinsic things like family and like spending quality time with my girlfriend, things like that. So
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that's great.
But
we were talking about, speaking of time, we were talking about the time it takes to, when you're taking a product through production, the time it takes to build out the test setup, and you were mentioning that takes a while.
Yeah. You mean for like
test stands we were talking about, right? I love like scripting and all that stuff.
Oh yeah. Well, because I think I was asking you about like the Digilent, was it the analog
discovery too? Yeah, so that's that's true. That's my news from this week. My course now has a bundle option, so if you sign up for 3 months of contextual electronics, you get the academic pricing on the analog discovery too. And so
can I sign up?
yeah, I'll post a link.
What's the analog pricing? Is it okay to say it on the air or?
Yeah. So usually it's $279. And then they're giving the academic pricing is $179, but then there's a bundle that they it includes like a breakout board to BNC headers for the scope probes, and it includes 2 probes. So that's that whole thing. Yeah.
Well, because it's interesting. I was because you've been looking for. I know you've been kind of. Because you've been talking about it for years, which is like
the Portalab. Yeah, Portalab is.
Portalab.
Yeah, we've talked about that on the show a bunch, and this is kind of moving towards that. Instead of like having a Pelican case that I haul with me, now this is like a small box. And
so how many candidates were there? So like, because you've cycled through like a lot of different systems that had potential.
That's true, and so I used the Salier for a while, and that was good. I liked the Salier, the Logic 4. But it wasn't enough of a scope, basically. That was the main problem.
Okay. And what was the speed, the scope speed?
It's like 6 megahertz or something like that. But it's not
bad. Yeah.
No, it's not bad, but it's not a true scope behavior either. It's only one channel, so those things together. So, so I've been and the link I'll have about this announcement. I did a bunch of streams that aren't really public, but I was just playing around with the Analog Discovery 2 a bunch when I was streaming videos, and yeah, it's great. It's a great little tool. It's all uses a computer screen for UI, so it's USB controlled. So that some people don't like. Dave doesn't like that, but I think from a certain perspective, it's interesting because like you said, like we were talking about scripting around doing test stands and stuff. Maybe that's kind of interesting.
Well, I think that's like because like so for some background story, we were talking before the show, and then he was talking about the Analog Discovery 2, and and it's really an interesting thing because it's an open source instrumentation tool, like it's oscilloscope, function generator, and also
logic, spectrum analyzers, like a bunch of stuff. Yeah.
Oh yeah, but it also you can Python script it, and that is that probably had the most interest for me because when you manufacture stuff, then you're always looking for different ways to do the test automation. And you have, and the holy grail for instrumentation is like kind of scriptable instrumentation, so that you can just have it and, like put the probes on, it'll go through whatever the test sequence is and then give you a pass fail, and so if you can script it, then it just makes things so much easier. So I'm really curious about testing out this tool now.
Yeah, right, and especially if you do like with if you could tie the scope and the function generators into like a pogo pin header or something too, like you could really do you could do some interesting things there for sure. So
well, because like the test jigs, the test fixtures that like that you normally see with the toggle clamps and the pogo pins.
Yeah,
like those test fixtures, they're $50 in China. So all you do really, like for those people that don't know how to get that instrumentation. What you do is like, at least for me, I have the luxury of going to Shenzhen, but you just take your PCB to Shenzhen and you go to the stand, like the stand in the electronics market that does the pogo pin fixtures. And then you just take a red marker and you highlight all the holes that you want the pogo pins to hit.
Oh, really? That's awesome. They don't even they don't ask for Gerbers or anything. They just do it manually. They're like, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, you just give them, and you have to give them the PCB because they'll measure it themselves,
Yeah. Okay.
and then use that to test it. But yeah, and then you pay $50, like $50, and you get a test fixture, and then that's a
Holy
full
crap.
test fixture with and just a bunch of wires coming out for each of the pogo pins, and then you connect those to whatever. And so I would probably connect it to either like Normally I'd connect it to a microcontroller, and I'd have like a test routine going. But like if the analog discovery, like I think it'd be interesting to play around with the analog discovery because it might be interesting to check out like say voltage levels and things like that.
Yeah. Right. If you put like a mux on board or something, so you could actually switch, or like an analog switches and stuff like that, you can make a little matrix board or something.
Yeah. And just so people know, I have no affiliation with the analog discovery. I'm not sponsored by it. I'm not trying to.
I'm not either.
It, but,
just this is partnership.
Yeah. But it does sound interesting, and and it is an open source solution. So like that makes me really curious about it.
Yeah. Well, and so like when Osman was on too, we were talking about like he's doing kind of like software scripting to like RF spectrum, right? And so now, if this is that same kind of thing for to test equipment, that's interesting. And but that's kind of what we want. Like we're in the age of there's a lot more software talent, and you can get a lot done when you have software talent. You can script that kind of stuff, versus having to do it all traditional way or having someone flip switches or whatever, right? So all that stuff has a lot of benefit.
Well, I feel like if you're an engineer, then it's not really a matter of having software talent. I think being able to write software should be a tool in your toolbox. Like you need to have, maybe, like it depends on what language. Like I would say C or C++ is kind of a basic for the firmware. Like you need to control your own firmware if you're like a hardware engineer. And also I think Python is a really useful tool for just like it's like
gluing stuff together, right?
Yeah. It's like it's the interface. It's the glue tool that like when you need something quick and dirty, you just throw a bunch of Python at it.
Right. Yeah, you could shove it into like a spreadsheet or something then too, and that's nice.
I mean like converting text files or like parsing text files and like things like that. Then it just makes so much more sense. Like converting text files in C sucks, or C++
it does.
sucks.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah. So I was getting a bit preachy there, but just saying for all you young engineers out there.
Right. I know. But it's so are you doing test stands now or no for your stuff?
Yeah. So I have I just got another one in these are just these are like the standard test stands that you would use in a production factory, but they're just so cheap. I mean, they're really
$50 is really cheap.
Yeah, it's hard to explain. Like people don't really understand that like that stuff is just available. And so I see a lot of people making their own test stands, like laser cut, et cetera, and then but in Shenzhen they basically have a template, and all they do is they modify the thing that holds the pogo pins. So it already has the toggle clamp and all the wire
Oh, really?
interfaces.
Okay. So what do they do? They just mill out or drill out the different pogo spots basically?
Yeah, well they have normally I think they have a CNC drill and a CNC machine, and they'll just mill out whatever to hold the circuit board.
To get the outline.
Yeah. There's a stabilizer and alignment pins to hold the circuit board, and then there's the pogo pins which go up. And those are the main things. And that's why it's so cheap, is because the templates, the rest of the framework is already there. So they're not
You're not starting from scratch each time, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So
That's cool.
Anyways,
So when you do it though, you're saying that you have a micron board that you actually then go and write separate firmware for or something?
Yeah. So then you just have feed that into a microcontroller board, and then you'd have a pass-fail criteria.
Got it. Cool. No, that's not bad, right? I mean, it's just that you have the overhead of having to write the firmware for it then.
Yeah, it's the test, the writing the test software is part of everything too. That's just another task to throw onto the pile when you when you're running a business.
Right. Yeah.
But it's really interesting. I think and I feel like I guess running a business it's a lot of work, but I'd recommend it for people to learn it as early as possible, because it's useful. And then I think it's I don't know. I think it's like it's.
You're saying it's another skill,
like,
though. You're saying that that's another skill to work on, and that it will pay dividends later, right?
yeah, I mean, like I think because I don't want to worry, like like when you're an engineer and like right now at like I'm 43, and so I'd be considered an old engineer. So if I tried to work at Silicon
Right.
Valley, and then
Yeah.
I'd be like, oh, is there like age discrimination or whatever? But
Yeah, but you look like you're 23, Akiba. Come on, man.
not really, not really. Like you must be referring to my rippling muscles. And my,
Yeah, that's what it
no,
was.
that's
Yeah.
not. Yeah, yeah,
It's all those vacation photos.
that's actually not true. I'm getting really flabby, especially after the Europe vacation.
Right,
But
all the Spanish wine.
yeah. But I mean, it's like I don't. But for me, then I just focus on like kind of designing, like designs that I think that I want to do, or that like that I think can do well in the
Yeah.
market, and then I don't need to worry about all that stuff. But the other thing is like, when I'm doing what I enjoy doing, and when I'm 65, 70, I'm still going to be doing what I enjoy doing, and I think
Right.
that's really important.
Sure, definitely. Because and I think that a lot of like, I mean, that kind of ties into like lifestyle inflation, stuff like that too. But like what you said, when engineers kind of age out, right? Like
Yeah.
they usually go into like management or whatever, and they move up in companies.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
man, it breaks my heart too. I see like formerly really talented engineers taking on like. I have one very specific example of like this formerly very talented engineer who took on a management role, and then he just kept taking like progressively worse roles because his lifestyle inflated to to match the salary, and it's like he goes somewhere new and it wasn't the best option for his life, but he had to chase the money effectively to maintain his lifestyle, and it's like that's a nightmare,
I mean, like I think for that, that's a different. I think that's a different topic, which is like engineers that go into management, because because management isn't a very portable skill, like so you can be like
Right.
like
So if you're a manager at like an agricultural tech company, it doesn't necessarily translate to like automotive or something like that, even. Or you mean within outside of tech then?
if you're a manager, like say IBM or something like that, and then like you're managing people, but you're also dealing with all like kind of the politics and stuff that's specific to that company.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And then like when you change to a different company, then you can get placed into like like maybe another large company, but then you have to relearn everything. And
Right.
then, I don't know. I'm just like I've seen the grind, and then like and people kind of job hop all the time, but just like I'm a designer, so like I don't think that I'd want to be like just I'd want to at least deal with like full-time corporate management. I do understand like having to manage certain things, like when you're manufacturing stuff, you have to manage the factories and
Oh,
the
sure,
people
yeah,
involved
right,
there.
right. Well, I think the main thing that you're talking about, it sounds like to me at least, is like, regardless of what you end up doing, it's like make sure that you're focusing on skills that are useful to future roles, and so either as running your own business or making it portable enough that it could work within different places, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, actually, because my girlfriend reminds me of this too, that not everybody wants to run their own business, and so
That's
like
so
I think
true.
that's
Yeah.
it's not easy. You're taking a lot of risk all the time, and so you just become more comfortable with it, and you learn how to manage it. But I think like it is like I have like this an aversion to authority, and so like I'm not an ideal like kind of employee. Like I never felt comfortable at companies, and so I never felt secure. Whereas like having my own business then is
You're the
at
boss. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm kind of an asshole boss, but still.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I hate my boss, but that's me. Crap.
I was gonna ask, do you have employees or no?
I have like, so I have people that like sometimes I when I need help, then I would contract stuff out. But like I don't really have employees. Like I don't have anybody that like kind of relies on me for salary.
Got it.
So I do, like I have a very small operation, and then and I take care of everything, almost everything myself. And then like yeah, I like to, like I think it's possible to actually grow a company with, and actually minimize like, or not needing employees up to a certain point, and then I'd have to start thinking about, about it. Because like right now, like a lot of the logistics, then you can farm out,
Yep.
and then which is like a big part of like say running like my operation, which is an online shop, is just logistics.
Right.
And then
Yep.
the manufacturing you could farm out. The testing, I would either the testing you can have it done at the manufacturer, but I like to do it in house.
But you don't trust them.
Yeah, I mean
That's healthy. Yeah.
I mean, yeah. So, because they'll say something, but then I would have to double check anyways. So so I'd rather just like test here.
Yeah.
And then,
Right.
but I mean, like at a certain point, then I think the administration would get to the would get so that like you'd have to actually maybe hire somebody. But I think there's already a lot of services that are available that
Right. I think we are entering an age where there's more of that on-demand type stuff that really does enable, solo engineers. I have an article in the queue that's supposed to be published soon about that. So.
I'm
Yeah.
interested to read that one. Solo
Yeah.
engineers.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, you'd have to. Actually, I guess if there were some gathering hole where people could like kind of swap stories and talk shop, hint hint, then maybe we can form like kind of a support group for solo engineers.
Oh.
That there might be an article for or something, hint hint. But no, but anyways,
Okay. Yeah.
but yeah, it's actually just kind of knowing what resources are available, and so
Right.
but there are a lot of resources.
Yeah. Cool.
So.
Well, so you're back now. You're back in Japan.
Oh, yeah,
You're
yeah.
Working on
So
your own stuff
finally.
again for now. Is that kind of the?
Yeah. So because the World Bank stuff tied me up for a while, and then there were like other kind of contract projects that tied me up, and also I think I was trying to I was trying to do too many things at one time, whereas now
No.
so I feel like now I have more I have more focus, and I have more like sense of what I want to do, and so I'm gonna
Time to get back on Twitter, man. We can ruin that quickly.
I think, yeah, it's actually Twitter's nice because like I think all the tech nerds are mainly on Twitter because like
I
if I
think so,
check
too.
Facebook is more like my family and
Yep.
and stuff, and then Instagram I'm still trying to wrap my head around, so I don't fully understand how it's used.
Dave started using it too. I finally convinced him to use it, but he actually he's smart. He tied if this then that so that it tweets out his photos and stuff like that. So
Okay.
it's like a content hub around pictures. That's the way to think about it, I think.
Yeah, but I mean, people have like these massive hashtags, like hashtag
Oh.
anything, and so like,
Yeah,
I'm
whatever.
like, I don't like, what's the purpose of that? So I'm
Yeah.
still trying to figure all that out. But yeah.
I wouldn't work too hard on that one.
But I mean, I think like right now, I'm also trying to do more in person stuff, like workshops, organizing talks, like creating, like basically organizing a community around like kind of actual applications of Internet of Things rather than the technology.
Yeah,
So
that's great. That's great.
So that's kind of at least where I'm headed right now.
Cool. Well, you could set up like the Akiba school of IoT out at the farm or something.
That'd be with no students. Ha, 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 ha. But I don't know. I think it's interesting. Like we live in an amazing time. Like technology is dirt cheap. Like people don't understand. Like like the ARM was it the 32-bit Cortex M3 is like under $1.
Yep.
So
Yep. It's nuts.
Like, it's just like the cost of technology is amazingly low, and and really I think the main barrier and the cost of equipment. Like when I was a young engineer, I dreamed about having my own lab. Like today, everyone and their grandma has their own lab. So
Oh yeah. Oh man. I was trolling YouTube again, and I ran across an interview, Beers in Akiba's workshop. Oh man, what a throwback!
that was like
Akiba talking about specula.
oh yeah, the speculum. Yeah, that was trying to that was when I had the weather balloon project, and I had to get a circuit board inside a weather balloon. So then I went to I had to go to the sex shop in Akihabara and ask them, like, I whispered like, do you guys have speculums? And the guy's like, for the front side or the back side? And I was just like, backside, please. And then yeah, and then
Yeah, that was 2012, man. That's crazy.
Yeah. So that was great. That was like Ian came down and he was checking out Speculum. He was like, oh, this thing, ha 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 ha. And then, but yeah. Actually, I haven't seen Ian in a while. I need to catch up with him.
Yeah.
So
Then I want to hear about that service, that cable. I saw the cable service they launched, the dirty cables.
Yeah, I mean that's another example of like things,
super
like
cheap, solving a problem of things that are super shitty if you don't deal with it every day, right?
Yeah. So like for those that don't know, like so Ian runs Dangerous Prototypes, and then they launched the dirty cables service where you can just get custom cables made, and that's like a huge problem. Like I have to make my own cables all the time, and it sucks. Like it just totally sucks. It's just the
worst.
Yeah. Like I don't have like a pneumatic cable crimper, and so like I do it by hand, and your hand,
your forearm just lights on fire.
Yeah. And so like now I just get all my cables like made in China, but then it's like a pain in the ass. So Ian launched the service where like he'll just do the custom cables, and it's like a really nice drag and drop GUI interface to get to make the cables. And then also he has a service that's really interesting too, dirty decapping. So you can actually
I haven't seen that one.
If you check on the dirty PCB's website, they have dirty decapping. So they'll decap a chip and then take high resolution photos of it for like $75. So actually that sounds
awesome.
really useful too.
Yeah, that's really fun.
So
that's good for like when you're buying those bags of linear regulators, right? Make sure you can like sample them and be like, are these actually linear regulators?
Oh yeah. I mean, like I don't think people like they wouldn't. I don't think they'd give you fault because I would buy like for the linear regulators then because it's such a jelly bean piece of equipment now that like you just buy the Chinese parts, and like it happens, but Chinese people don't knock off Chinese parts that often because like you start like a trade war, like a domestic trade war, and like and then everybody gets screwed.
And how much are you really going to save on a 10-cent regulator, right? It's like, oh well, this was 8 cents.
Yeah, I mean like so it's just so like but yeah, I buy regulators by like the 1,000-piece bag. It's awesome. So that's the world we live in today, where like a regulator is like 10 cents. So.
Yep. Well, awesome, man. So where should people ping you these days if they want to get a hold of you?
I think, well, let's see. My website is like kind of messed up right now, so it's like still in transition. And let's see, the web shop is still there. I'm actually upgrading the web shop right now, but I guess people just ping me on Twitter, like Freaklabs, like at Freaklabs.
At Freaklabs. All right, we'll get them on there one way or another, folks.
So yeah, I need to check Twitter more. So right now I'm just posting interesting articles, but I'll try and like post like, because the thing is like a lot of details of my life are pretty inane since I live in the countryside. So I don't know if they're that
I think you have a very interesting life, man. I think what you should do is you should use if this then that, right? And you could bundle it all so it like sends you a text, but like only like once a day or something. Like use that as like a test case, So it does like that's the thing, like getting like every time notifications, that ruins my day. But if you can like bundle it up, that works better.
Oh yeah. So I'll check it out. Maybe I'll post more poop pictures from the sanitation stuff.
Oh God,
so I got plenty of those.
We've created a monster.
So.
Oh man, awesome. Well, thanks for coming back. I'm sure we're gonna talk to you again soon.
Okay, yeah. Well, take care and say hi to Dave and everyone for me. And also, I love the shows with Mightyome too. So like, yeah, like Mightyome is pretty awesome. So I always like hearing his stories.
Okay, we'll get him back on. Maybe the three of us can talk next time Dave can't make it.
Oh, okay. Oh, sounds good. Hope to see y'all here soon.
All right.
So
see ya.
Bye.